What makes a city good? This is a question that's been debated by urban planners and civil engineers since cities have existed. But a better question to ask might be, who are cities good for? Because cities don't happen by accident. They're built piece by piece through policies, investments, and decisions made decades before you or I have even existed. And those policies have decided who gets access to opportunity and who's left behind. Today, these policies still reflect outdated values, such as efficiency over equity, or profit over people, and mobility over care. Planning can and should be different. We can design cities that give back time and strengthen community and put dignity back into our neighborhoods. Here's how. When you picture a neighborhood, what comes to mind? Because to me, it's a single-family home with front yard and maybe a driveway, because that's how I grew up, and that's how my friends and my family and a lot of people in my life did. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem isn't the homes itself, but the policy that allows that, which is called single-family zoning. And what that does is that it effectively bans duplexes, triplexes, small apartment buildings, and mixed-use developments in many residential neighborhoods. So why does that matter? And that's because this zoning makes it illegal to build a kind of dense, walkable, affordable neighborhood that many people want to live in. It limits housing supply and drives up prices, which locks out low-income and working-class families that want to live there. And it does this because a lot of these zoning codes have requirements. They require big lots, and they require height limits, basically saying that you need to have this much space to live here. And it's not just these policies that are the problem. It's profit. And it's been a problem for over the past decade. We've had these investment giants and corporate landlords buying up these single-family homes. These businesses such as Vanguard and Blackstone and Invitation Homes going to fast-paced cities like Phoenix or Dallas or Atlanta and any major metro area and just buying up as many single-family homes as possible. And the reason that this is a problem is because they're not buying to house people, they're buying it to make profit. These homes are no longer homes, they're an asset to them. And these investors, because they have so much sway in the residentials, oppose new zoning reforms that make housing more affordable, because you can't really make profit if your competition is having cheaper homes. And besides these investors and corporate landlords buying up single-family homes, we also have normal people like you and me doing this because of a little thing called Airbnb. And I don't blame them. You see how much an Airbnb host makes and you kind of want to get in on that. It's easy passive income. But the thing is, they turn these normal neighborhoods into essentially hotels. And the thing is, a lot of tourist cities, especially think California or Texas or New York, these families and people that are living there are losing homes to just people trying to make a quick buck. And because of this quick buck, many investors buy homes specifically to rent out. Not only does this drive up prices, but it kind of destroys the neighborhood community in a way. Because if you're short-term guests, what do you care about the community? If you actually live there, you want the sidewalks to be able to have your kids ride bikes on them. You want the roads to be wide enough to fit your cars. You want the parks to be nice and the schools to be good. But if you're just there for a weekend, you don't care. That being said, that kind of sucks. So what do you do about it? Well, a lot of cities are kind of already doing some things that are being shown to be somewhat effective. And some of the things that they are doing is enforcing these short-term rental caps, which kind of mainly affects Airbnbs. But basically what this does is that if you are an Airbnb host and you can only rent out your home 100 days out of the 665 days a year, that's kind of going to disincentivize you because you're not going to make that much money. If you can only make money for a certain amount of time and you still have to pay rent and utilities for the rest, that's not very incentivizing. And some other things that they're doing is making like a residency requirement. If you want to rent out a home short term, the owner has to live there. Now long term, this does get a little but for the short term rent outs, this at least does a little bit of something. And my personal favorite, and what I think is very straightforward, is just a straight up no Airbnb zone. So in very sensitive areas like schools, no Airbnbs, because you want families with children to essentially live around those areas to make it easier and safer to go to school. That kind of solves the, Airbnb and BlackRock Vanguard problem. But what about the original problem I talked about in the beginning, which basically talked about single family housing and all those zoning laws? Well, there's a little thing, a concept in urban planning called gentle density. And basically what that does, it's a concept that means to fit smaller houses or like smaller scale houses into a neighborhood that like lets more people live there while also keeping the integrity or character of the neighborhood. So it's not like an urban sprawl solution, and it's not creating more high rises, but kind of more original housing. The type of homes that we used to build, the homes that I mentioned in the beginning as well, like duplexes and triplexes, and courtyard apartments. And there are courtyard apartments that actually exist more than duplexes, but just places that allow more people to live in a smaller area. Even though that is, great and all, it's not really something that urban planners and civil engineers can solve right at this moment. That is because it's a policy issue, it's a zoning issue. But the good thing about that is that there's a thing called civic duty that you as a constituent, as a citizen of your state, town, whatever, have a voice. If you want these things, you can go and call up a representative, which you can go and type into Google, who are my representatives? Or you can, attend a town hall meeting. There are things and a lot of impacts that you can make at a local level. So if this is something that you want, start speaking out about it. Legalizing gentle density doesn't just make a neighborhood prettier, make it easier to move around, but it's better for the environment as well, for all you hippies out there, because compact housing, means shorter commutes, which either people are walking or if they do take a car, they're not emitting that much emissions into the air, and less land is being taken up. So you're getting social equity and a pretty good win for the environment. Urban sprawl and the housing crisis are very visible problems. So they're problems that people focus on because they're right in front of our face. But there are more hidden problems that come along with these. And one of them is temporal inequality. So what is that? Temporal is time, and inequality is unequal access to things. So what that means is that our resource of time is not distributed very equally in our cities depending on where you live and perhaps your income or your neighborhood or something like that. So if you are a wealthy resident, usually, not often if you're wealthy, or just live in the right neighborhood, you are more likely to enjoy time autonomy. So what is that? Time autonomy can be better described as its opposite, which is temporal poverty. So if you live in temporal poverty, your time is stolen. And what does that mean? That means that you have a longer commute, that you usually have to wait for more things, that the things that you do depend on are maybe not of best quality and tend to break down, and God forbid you're disabled because a lot of infrastructure isn't made for you. That means that your time, because of these things, is stolen. So you live in temporal poverty. But if you are, maybe wealthier or just got lucky and live in a good neighborhood, you get to enjoy and spend time in time autonomy, which basically means that because you have multiple quality access to different types of, whether it's forms of transportation or communication or work or whatever, you get to choose how to move, how to live. In fact, if you live in America and you are more low income, on average, you have double the commute of a wealthier person to get to work. And the reason that this is because usually when people are planning, it's because they plan in distance. So in America, we use miles. So if you are a little urban planner and you want to know, okay, if this person lives here, how long does it take for them, or how far is work, a school, a park? And let's say they choose, it's 3 miles. Okay, that's fine. But the thing is, when you plan out distance in miles, you don't really consider the more human problems, traffic, accidents. Maybe you just don't have a car, don't want to take a car. And so instead of planning in distance, we should plan in how long it takes to get somewhere. that is the idea behind time equity. So how do you solve this? Well, if you are into urban planning in the slightest, or maybe watch the YouTube video or there, you have heard of the term 15-minute city. Now, a lot of people start to foam at the mouth whenever they hear this term, and there's a lot of hate that comes into this. A lot of people tend to think that it'll be illegal to use a car, or that they're trying to take away their car, or I've heard the argument that, well, what if you get a dream job 30 minutes away? Then drive 30 minutes away. The thing about a 15-minute city is that it's not trying to restrict you. It's trying to make more opportunities open to you. And it's not literally like going to be a barrier and within 15 minutes you like can't leave, or it's not a barrier. It's the idea that you should not have to be able to travel more than 15 minutes to get to the places that are in your life. Your kid should not have to go 15 minutes to go to a school, or you shouldn't have to be able to take somewhere or some car or some train for your wife who's in labor and have to go 30 minutes away to a good hospital. You shouldn't have to be able to take long commutes to go to places that you need, that you go to every day, that are convenient for you. That is the idea of a 15-minute city. And even better, more power to you if you don't need a car to get there. You know, a lot of Americans love cars. I have a car. I got one at 16, and that is something that I've been wanting ever since I was younger than 16. We love our cars, and there's nothing wrong with that, and no one is trying to take that away from you. We are just, when people are trying to use a 15-minute city, they're just trying to provide an option to make things closer, more accessible, and give you the opportunity to maybe not use a car. If you just want to go on a nice family stroll and go to the park, or maybe get some fruits or whatever at a grocery store, you shouldn't need to pack everyone into a car. You can just take a nice little family stroll there. That's the idea behind it. 15-minute cities tend to be the most popular and most controversial solution to this temporal inequality. And even if you are a big proponent for it, it's not going to work everywhere. It's not going to work very well in a rural or with geographies that are pretty unique. It's for metro areas. So what else is there? Well, people have been talking about making things mobile. So what does that mean? Not just like on your phone mobile, like mobile, being able to move, like a car or a truck. So for example, a lot of people need like DMV work or like government work or something to be done. You can go, if you need an ID renewal or childcare support, instead of having to travel and get in traffic and take time out of your day or to go on a weekend or whatever to go to this place that might not be very close to you. Imagine how nice it would be to have those things come to you. So what does this mean? If you have ever seen those trucks like that have you donate blood, you know, you go in there, you sign up, you get your blood drawn, you leave, something sort of like that. Maybe that's what people mean by like a DMV on wheels or something. It doesn't have to be a DMV. That's a spitball in certain entities or systems that people go to, but it would cut a lot of travel time if these systems could come to you instead of you going to it. Temporal inequity is a consequence of a much larger problem, and that problem is inaccessibility. So, you know, in temporal inequality, it's just basic services like education or healthcare are hard to reach and sometimes hard to trust. So the problem isn't just distance, but the design itself. So how do you fix that? Well, a lot of low-income areas are often underfunded, and if they are underfunded, it means the design isn't that well thought out, so it's also hard to navigate, and if it's hard to navigate and it's not well thought out, then it's disconnected, so it creates this not only inaccessibility, but a lack of community. Community is very important. It's what helps make cities more alive, what brings people together. And the problem of having a lack of community and also having little accessibility, they are not mutually exclusive problems. They are things that can be solved with the same thing. One of the ways people want to solve this is with a thing called equity anchors. And what equity anchors are institutions that people already rely on. These are your public schools, your old folks' homes, your libraries, things that people use in their day-to-day life or will use eventually. If you have an equity anchor, let's use, for example, a huge, ginormous library, and a lot of people think that libraries are just places to get books. That's not. People go there to get some job resume help or to print out things. They are centers that people use for things other than just reading. So let's say your equity anchor is this ginormous library. That is now the heart of your city, because when people plan things, they plan usually like housing or a business or whatever, and they make everything fit around that. But if you have an anchor that you want, you can make that the heart of your city and have things placed around that. So if your heart of your city is a big library, you want ways to get people there. And so you don't have no longer this inequality of accessibility if you plan it right, because now everyone should be able to access that. The beautiful thing about an equity anchor is that there's no limit to what it has to be. It doesn't just have to be a huge library. And when people talk about these things, they don't usually talk about it individually. They talk about combining services. So instead of having your heart of the city be a ginormous library, think of a strip mall type thing, where instead of one type of service, it's combined. So a library and a recreational center and a job training center and every type of care service that is important to that city or to that town or whatever, combined in a huge block area. The reason that these hubs would fix the inaccessibility problem, or at least help address it, is because it closes the proximity to services. It makes it so that way if you have to go to multiple places at once, you don't have to jump around the city. It is in one place right there, which saves you time in your day and probably saves you money on gas or whatever you're doing, or on a bus pass or something. And if it is all in one place, then designing for it should be much easier. You don't have just one building that's like focused really well on disabled people who are in a wheelchair, but maybe not so great for blind people. But if you have a space that you are dedicating to be accessible, you can focus and kind of like know all these things more and have a better design for it. These places would help build that sense of community back, because there is this shared ownership amongst it. If you see your neighbors using the same park or the same hospital, the same library, and you go around the same times, it fosters this local pride and civic engagement in it. It makes you see your neighbors more often, and probably incentivizes you to go out more because it's closer and easy to go to. This would allow for easier social cohesion because it brings different types of people together. If there's a center that's more dedicated towards elder care, a lot of young people aren't going to be around that area. But if there's a rec center right next to it, you're going to have more people in one shared space. And that's going to bring age groups, maybe ethnic groups, different types of work jobs. If there's this family, or if there's this dude that works a night shift and some other guy that works a day shift, they're probably not going to see each other a lot. But if they have that one shared time of day where they're going to the same appointment or something, or they're hitting up their local library or whatever, they're going to be able to have a place to actually meet together. And that's going to be really cool in helping to develop this sense of community and these friendships that people have sort of lost.
So what now? Well, we've identified key parts of the problem, and that's a good first step, but there's so much more that needs to be done. The problems of the housing crisis, urban sprawl, and temporal inequality are not just planning failures, but reflections of who is actually valued, who gets to live where, how much does it cost, and how accessible is daily life when someone does live there. Urban planning and political policies are what got people into this mess, but it is also what can get people out of it. We can legalize gentle density by lifting the ban on duplexes and courtyard apartments, so that way we can grow an affordable housing supply without destroying existing neighborhoods. We can plan around these equity anchors such as schools or libraries, so that way people have a community that they can gather around that almost everyone uses, that is easy to access. And you can plan for time equity so that access to opportunity isn't decided by how long it takes to get to a job or to a grocery store or to a doctor. But if we want to get the cities that we deserve, we have to fight for it. We have to use our civic duty to support zoning reforms in our city. We have to show up to local meetings and vote for candidates who actually treat housing as a right and not just some profit. And if we really care, we have to push for more public investment in infrastructure like libraries or rec centers and neighborhood services that we will actually use. We have so much power as constituents, but people try to dismiss these ideas because they think that they're too utopian. But I think that a better city is not just possible, but necessary. But the thing is that is only possible if people stop refusing to accept the way that things are. I don't want to live in a city dictated by profit, and I'm surprised that we have been for so long. Because if you want affordable housing, to get out of gridlock, and to live in a city that you are proud of, then the fight for a better city is your fight too.